Hey everyone, so back here with another vibe coding vlog. I guess I'm calling them that. And the goal of today is to kind of just do a recap of this agent development kit project that I was working on. I submitted yesterday to the hackathon, and if you follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter, you probably saw I came out with this marketing bot, which lets businesses, preferably small businesses that need help making Instagram videos or Instagram content, do that in a really creative way, and also come up with even campaigns by only providing 3 pieces of information. So it's a really robust tool that the business owner doesn't have to do a whole lot to get a good amount of value out of. So what I wanted to talk about primarily though is this ADK and my process of building with it. So I did make a diagram, and I think last time I was a little all over the place clicking all over cursor and trying to find stuff. So hopefully this diagram is going to help us kind of get through this. We use Lucid charts for this. But yeah, I mean, I think the big goal here is just to really talk about what I learned and kind of my recommendations or kind of how I would approach this moving forward as I kind of continue to build agents. So for those that are kind of like confused, I guess, off the get-go of like what an agent is, and have maybe just used Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, essentially those, are models, and then apps like Cursor or even the interface you interact with on like chatgpt.com are agents. So, obviously there's an OpenAI model, which is like, I forget what they're called now, but let's say 4.0 or Gemini 4.0 or even VO3. And that's, with that, you can call to that model and ask it to do things. And generally that's through a chat interface using an agent that those companies have made for you. But as we saw with Cursor, there's also ways to build agents that leverage multiple models and can do kind of specialized tasks. So with this agent development kit, you're basically able to take models and, without kind of doing complex training on your own, really make them purpose-built tools, which is cool because not everyone has $1 million to train a model and kind of customize it to their own business needs. But people do still have unique purposes. And of course you could check, just text ChatGPT all day and it would start to word memory and get used to your habits and kind of your preferences. But there's a layer beyond that we can go, and that's what the agent really is. So looking at my own projects over the last, 5 months, you can see that I started off with that baseball product, which essentially just used Gemini 2.0 out of the box and then passed it a bunch of images and a system prompt and let it go to town. To 2 weeks ago, I came out with the MongoDB product, MCP product that I launched. And that was really taking a Gemini agent, but teaching it real time how to use a database and how to make API calls I had written. So when you were interacting with that product, while you were interacting with Gemini, it was a very purpose-built version of Gemini, which I would consider an agent. If I was to deploy that now on Agent Engine or ADK, if other people had a product that needed to leverage 2023-2024 basketball playoff stats, it would be a great tool for that. And you could just take it out of the box. You wouldn't need to do anything else. It would just be really good at answering questions about the 2023-2024 playoffs. Now, that's a very niche agent, but I think what I learned about here with ADK is that niche agents have a ton of value. So if you go through this documentation on ADK, what you'll see is that every time you deploy an agent, regardless of the model, it can have different tools and memory settings and all sorts of instructions. And what that means is that if you send a query to an agent that has access to, let's say, Google search or an MCP like the one I built, it's going to give you wildly different results when you ask it the question about like, what are LeBron James's stats? And that's interesting because as you design systems now, these agents can become really specialized and efficient at doing certain tasks. So instead of, going and overloading the agent. So for example, here, in theory, I could just type into the newest Gemini Pro model. Here's my company, here's my domain name, here's my goal and target. Come up with a campaign for me, generate 2 images about that campaign, and make a video about it. And a pro model that has like research and reasoning and the ability to work as a background, it might do that all. But how effective would it be in doing it all? And that's what agents kind of solve for, is that right now there are limits to what one AI agent can do. There's context limit, right? We all know that, like, I think there's a 1 million token context limit for some of the best models now. And that can get exceeded, right? So for example, here, the first thing that this Gemini model is going to do is it's going to actually do 6 different Google searches and a ton of web scraping and just accumulate massive amounts of text and raw data. That can very easily get it, because there's a lot of junk data in there, to that massive context window. And it's also using its tooling to do that. So that's, computation heavy, making it less and less efficient as it kind of now has to go to its next step of like understanding that data, simplifying it, and making another, maybe API call. So with agents, what we can do is we can say, hey, you are purpose driven to do one thing. And once your one thing's done, all you need to do now is run it to another agent. And that's kind of what this system kind of talks about, which is the ability to kind of use services and call LLM agents that kind of use sessions or memory to kind of work together. So this was all a lot to learn, right? Like, this is a completely different way of architecting kind of a system than the traditional object-oriented programming, where things are very systematic and event A is going to correlate to event B, and you kind of are working off decision trees and recursive paths or whatever. This is very much you're giving these free-wielding thinking agents the ability to do tasks, and then once tasks are completed, actually work together and hand off to another task. So it's really cool to think about system design in this way. And it's something that, I'm gonna be honest with you, took me a long time to even get to where I'm at now, which I'd say is I kind of get the basics of this, but I'm still learning and getting frustrated with it. But without further ado, let's kind of just talk about how I approached it and some of these concepts and documentations from the ADK. I'll probably kind of come back to and talk about more as we go along. So first and foremost, I thought the best way to interact with the ADK would be just a really simple app that I hosted on Firebase, and that's what this app here is. And what you'll see here is that this app is just a front end, essentially, to interact with our agent system. Now, this is an HTTP request, so to access and talk to these agents, we did need to host it somewhere. Originally, I posted on Discord. I was a little confused because I thought when you deployed agents to Agent Engine, which, where is it? We can talk about. Let's see. Where's deployment? Deploy. There we go. Agent Engine. Okay. So originally, the first thing I did was I went into, I built a couple agents, and that's super easy and fun to do. I guess I should probably say it off the bat that seriously, anyone that, you can just open up your terminal and hit ADK, install the ADK, pip ADK. And then if you, even if you don't know how to code, it's really easy to kind of build an agent. I think there's a tutorial in here, but essentially it's kind of like just speaking English, essentially. Like, and though what you can do from your terminal is once you've pipped ADK, you kind of, write an agent out. You kind of like this, and I'm sure you could use an LLM to do that too. That's great. But once you've done this, you can go right to ADK Web, and it'll actually be an interface where you can talk to the agent and see how it's responding. So actually building these things is quite easy. So the first thing I did was just kind of operate in that ADK Web, and I wonder if I still have it running on local or not. I probably don't. But let me just at least pull up a picture so you can kind of understand what I'm talking about, the web interface. Okay. So essentially what you're going to see is, what's the picture in here? Great. Yes. Okay. So you're going to see something like this. So essentially you write your agent out, right? It's like I chose a model, I gave it some instructions, I define what tools it can use. And right from there, you're going to actually in real time be able to launch this and interact with that agent in a setting like this. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is just get your agent to a point where, like, for example, if you ask it, my name is Jake and this is my company, that it will actually reply with like a marketing brief and use a tool like a Google tool, or in this thing, Get Current Time tool. That's the first thing you want to do. And it's actually really fun. That was probably my favorite part of this whole project, is just playing around, writing these agents, and then in real time testing and debugging them and seeing how they call tools and how they'll respond to various prompts. So this was a huge win for me, was just like even understanding how to build with this. In fact, I wish I had used this for my previous MBA project. So if for nothing else, if you just want to kind of figure out, hey, how do I build an agent, like a custom tool for myself, I would recommend just doing the quick start. And I promise you, even if you've never coded before, if you just hit install ADK and maybe just like read this document, like you'll understand that it's literally, you're just saying in English, this is the model I want to use, this is what I want my agent to do, and here's like a tool I'd like it to use, and the list of tools you can find in here, everything from Google search to getting the weather to maps or something like that. So step one is to kind of get this working. After I had that working and I made a simple Firebase front end. Now, Firebase is great. If for no one that's ever used it, it's a Google product, so it hosts really nicely on Google and manages authentication and credentials well for you. You can actually vibe code with it too. I think there's a studio, here. So you can actually just go ahead and say, make me a form with these 3 fields, and it'd be as simple as that. And again, you can also import your repo if you wanted to show your agents to it and all that good stuff. So once this front end's made and your agents are all made, your next step here is going to be to deploy it. And that's where I kind of got confused. So I tried to use Agent Engine and deploy all 6 of my agents at once using the Agent Engine documentation. And what I realized after doing that is, first of all, it seemed like Agent Engine would, I guess, not want to take all of my agents at once. When I tried to do it, and maybe I was doing something wrong. I think I had way too many dependencies running. So for example, my agents had a tool to call Grok. My agents had a tool to call Imogen and Vio. And it seemed like when I tried to deploy them all at once, Agent Engine didn't like that. Now, I'm not good at networking deployments and cloud deployments, so I could have been doing this wrong, but I troubleshooted per a day. Like, I had an Agent Engine deploy running, and then when I would try and network and connect with it, it was totally falling apart. So what I did instead is I just kind of went with old reliable, and I did a cloud run. There's pretty good documentation here on how to do a cloud run. That's great. And I'm sure actually you could even use their UI to use Cloud Run if you kind of wanted to host an app using this, the ADK web kind of out of the box. But all I did was deploy kind of my backend services on Cloud Run. And what that let me do is kind of have all of these agents sitting on the cloud in a service that I could call. In addition, this service was supporting a few other functions and processing, things that I wanted to do. So that's, the extent that I'll talk about deployment, because that's not really what I want to go too deep into, nor am I an expert on. So let's kind of talk about now that, we kind of got through the basics, how I built a front end, how I, used ADK to build these agents. How did I architect the system? So I ran into a lot of issues architecting this system. So even at this point, like everything I just explained to you, first 2-3 days, great. Like I was having fun. I was building my agents, got my front end, even the cloud deploy. Like I was able to get the agents running on Docker and sitting in the cloud. The issue now became, how does this actually like functionally work? And how do I like kind of monitor that everything's kind of working as planned? And that's where, multi-agent design gets really tricky. So for example here, the user enters their form. So they enter these three things and it goes to the marketing agent. So this marketing agent's running on Gemini 2.5. And if you want, here's another kind of diagram on the GitHub that talks about how each agent runs and what they use. But so anyways, marketing agent runs on Gemini 2.5. And since it's a root agent, since it's like there's different types of agents you can define, it has access to tools and it can actually call Google search. However, Gemini 2.5 innately has a setting to ground answers in Google search. So it's a little redundant there. And it's a little confusing about when it could use the tool or just ground itself. So regardless, you use a super powerful model to take this form and, like I said, do a ton of research, just spit out, thousands of words and blocks of text from like everything from target market to, competitors to just tell me everything people have ever said about this business in reviews. So that was the first thing that I had to learn how to do. Now, originally, I actually had this running in real time as a sub-agent. And the issue with that is that sub-agents really seem to struggle to call multiple tools and make calls. And additionally, when that sub-agent would try and pass data to the next agent, I was quickly exceeding my token limit and memory session state because I was getting all this data accumulated between the agents. So the best way I found to do this was you have this root agent that does the most powerful thing, which is, aggregate tons of information on this company and stuff, and it has a very long prompt. And then from there, all I did was I kind of made this, instead of parallel processing, I just passed that information over to the research agent and said, read this block of text and make it like a 2-page doc that a creative agent, person could read and brainstorm off of. So this could be done really easily. And I think I used Gemini 1.5 Flash. And the reason being is I was exceeding my API call limit as like kind of just an independent contributor. I didn't want to keep calling the most powerful model, and especially because this is all happening ideally fast. And all it's doing is reading and simplifying a document. That's something that an old model can do really well. From there, I tried to pass that to a creative agent who would then read it, think about, some ideas and pass those ideas to Grok for feedback, because I knew Grok would be pretty good at making social media stuff, right? Because it's trained on lots of social media data and it tends to be a little bit more critical and creative. So I was like, okay, it'd be a fun tool to call here. Now, originally, again, because it's a sub agent being orchestrated by marketing agent, I built Grok as a tool. But what I later really kind of realized is that Grok could just call straight from research agent. So what I did was, once research agent made its 1 to 2 page brief, I just sent that to Grok with the instruction of make 2 campaigns. And the reason I did that is research agent actually isn't calling Grok. This is like basically the service just runs Grok as soon as research agent returns a result, which is like has a word, this is the result, here's the research plan, and it just copy and paste that text in an API call. I was finding that like telling agents to kind of use tools and have discretion with tools when you always want the tool to be used seemed to be not the best way to go about it. And it's better just to kind of treat it like a flow where the tool must be used and it's just the service is calling the tool rather than the agent calling the tool. Again, kind of a small differentiation, and the more you play with this stuff, you'll start to see that sometimes you do want to give agents the ability to make a call or use a tool in a flow, and sometimes you just always want it to happen, especially because Grok itself is an agent, so it's going to actually have some processing and some ability to kind of like take in abstract thoughts. It's not just a function like, searching a database or doing a math problem or something. So once Grok was called, it would just return text output to creative agent, and then that creative agent's job was actually to take that big 2 ideas from Grok and format it so that our front end could parse it really easily. And, if you watched my demo yesterday, you can, I'll kind of show you an example. Kids who want oranges in Maryland. And I'm just going to let this run real quick. And that's essentially what's happening here. So this was like probably the most sophisticated part of the entire flow, was how do I take this limited information, really enrich it, and then once again simplify it so that I could make an API call and then use the results of the API call by another agent to format it for our front end. So this definitely took me the longest to figure out, and because of the limitations of a root agent versus this agent that's orchestrating and running these sub agents, like you're going to see all three of these agents are kind of going on in the back end, at once. And then it's even using a tool, which the service calls as, in between these two agents. I didn't kind of really throw that line, but, and that's really cool in my opinion. I mean, I think this kind of shows the power of agents to orchestrate and go take really limited information to kind of really do robust things. And you can see here, this is kind of like the output, like what's happening in the back end is thousands of words of text and Google searches and Grok API calls are happening. But because, it's synthesizing, it's something a user could actually do. So I'll just go ahead and select a campaign, but the next thing that happens is much more simple. So basically, user's going to now make a decision on one of these two campaigns. And now we're going to take the data of that campaign, which is just, these things, and we're just going to pass that to an image generation agent. And this agent, again, it's really trained to say, hey, here's a campaign. Here's what you're getting from the user. Generate us 2 images with Imagen 3 that kind of show off different aspects of that potential campaign that you're seeing. So again, could my marketing agent, probably use Imagen and, because it is 2.5 and a root agent that can use multiple tools? Sure. But would it really be best at orchestrating all of this and generating images? Probably not. It would, probably overload the agent to ask it to do all of this at once. So I kind of liked having this human in the loop where, if things were going wrong, it could kind of, correct course, like choose the campaign that made more sense for the business. And again, this image agent can call Imagen 3 and has instructions on once it gets images back from Imagen 3, what to show to our front end service, which is like a static file. And you can see it's, these kids playing with oranges, and that's wonderful. And has a little Instagram caption for us. So the last part of this was to go ahead and once a user selects a image was to go ahead and say, okay, now we have this image and we have this caption for the image. That's great. This is the direction I want to go with this is this campaign. How do I turn that into a video? So obviously you could just feed the Instagram caption straight to Veo and see what it produces. Or you could even download the image and feed that to Veo, and it would probably even do better for you based on how Veo works. But we're not gonna be able to do that through API calls. So what we did is we let the user make a selection here. We took the description of that image that was generated, as well as we took the details from marketing agent that's orchestrating this, who knows kind of what was going into these campaigns, to go ahead and generate a script for us. So this agent's just trained on Veo script writing best practices, so like using quick cuts, lighting, themes, all that good stuff. And it now is getting the decision from the user, as well as some of the marketing support to go ahead and write a good script and be informed as it writes the script. And then at that point, all this has to do is run that answer. As soon as that completes, the answer just dumps into Veo 2 agent, who now knows you're receiving a script. Go ahead and call Veo, and then return that to the user. So this is how I went about it. It was definitely interesting to think about processing times, memory, session state, token limits, and how all of that factored in and limited when to call an agent, when to just use a service in a flow, once results return, call service, versus hey, you're an agent, do you want to call the service versus that's something that really you have to learn. And also, as you write a custom tool, like the Grok tool that this can use, teaching it how to use the tool and when to use the tool is super interesting. So overall, really like this. I went deeper into Cursor this time around as well and got Playwright, which was really helpful. So I was able to share my screen with Cursor and kind of a lot of documentation to Cursor, which, this is all of this is pretty brand new. So, I'm reading this stuff, but again, it's a lot to read and kind of take in. So that the fact that I could kind of get Cursor to read and help me out with this was great. And overall, I think that we got a pretty cool product in the end here that I was happy with. So Let me know what you think. This is kind of how I went about ADK and just kind of a brain dump and of some of the roadblocks I went to. The deployment stuff was definitely hard, figuring out how to use a cloud run in ADK and what HTTP calls cap into it. We're learning how to go from like a point where you're just making agents in a vacuum to actually utilize them in flows where this agent can call these agents as tools, and then these agents, which are a tool, call another tool is like, it makes a diagram like this, which I made at the very end here. Super helpful probably going into it, as it would have kind of helped me keep things straight and really together. So let me know what you think. You have comments or questions, or if I got anything wrong here, I know I'm still learning some of this stuff. So yeah, thanks for watching.